Julian, Richard's just entered the waiting room as well.
Yeah, just joining him. Okay, Lynn, if you'd like to get going, then we should be, let's just start as we are now. We're recording.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this Health and Wellbeing Committee. This, strictly speaking, it's a briefing. I'm Councillor Lynn Denham and I'll be chairing this informal meeting. Due to the extreme weather temperature, this briefing is being held online instead of in person. This means that the meeting cannot be deemed to be a formal committee meeting under local government legislation. However, the committee can still discuss all the items on its agenda. Any items which the committee vote to support tonight will be formally proposed for approval by the Policy and Resources Committee at their meeting on the 25th of July next week. Once a motion has been proposed and seconded, members will be asked to vote either for or against, or indicate if they wish to abstain by raising their hands. An officer will then announce the outcome of the vote. Please note this briefing is being recorded and will be placed on the City Council website. Accordingly, anyone who speaks is deemed to have given consent to being recorded and for any recording to be broadcast or published. And thank you to officers for setting this up and enabling us so that we can avoid travelling and at least a little bit of heat. Appointment of substitutes. Julian.
Chair, although it's not a formal meeting, I can say we've got first team out. We've got all our committee members, so no substitutes.
Excellent, thank you. Any declarations of interest?
No.
Nope. Okay, thank you. No public participation?
No.
Okay. Minutes of the meeting of the 20th of June, which is not all that long ago. First of all, in terms of accuracy, and then, so page 1, people happy to agree that? Yep. Page 2. Okay, and then page 3. Thank you. I've got a couple of matters to raise, if I may. On page 2, with regard to the Child Poverty Task and Finish group and the recommendations, I did wonder whether there was a correction needed, but the wording of in the minutes is exactly the same as in the report that we received. But it doesn't specifically refer to the food poverty joint strategic analysis. It refers to the child poverty. So whether that's like a sort of a separate note, and I mean, apologies, I didn't spot it at the previous meeting. But I think it's important that we note that it was, the JSNA was food poverty rather than child poverty. Is that Lloyd?
Yeah, Chair, you're absolutely right. The focus of that report was food poverty. So I wonder whether Julian can make reference to that in an amended minute, or at least make that clear within the amended minute.
That can be done, yeah.
Thank you. And then with regard to one of the matters that we raised about removal of carpets, I have received a response from officers with regard to that. I don't know whether, Lloyd, you want to share that more widely or have a look outside of the meeting.
Chair, I think the plan was that we send it to yourself first, just to take a look over, and then if you're happy, then we can share that with wider committee members. So yeah, happy in your hands on that one.
Okay, I'll sort of take a second look at it, and I'll feed back. But thank you to Tom Mountford for doing that piece of work. And then the last item, sorry, is with regard to the community recovery strategy, because subsequent to the meeting, as chair and vice chair of this committee, certainly had a conversation with the chair of the communities committee as to where in fact the correct place for the financial hardship and welfare strand of the community recovery strategy should be. I think there was general agreement that it may be better belonged here, given the scope of the communities committee. Is that acceptable? Lloyd, do we need to do anything else? And are members content to ask for that change?
Chair, I'm seeing nods and thumbs up from members, and I think officers are going to look at whether the constitution was beige or grey on where that actually sat, and if it was, that might avoid us needing to put something through, a constitutional change through a motion at council. So if members are happy to support that on this call, I can pick that up with Sian offline, Chair, and we'll find a way through that, either formally or informally.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Anything else from anyone with regard to the minutes from our last meeting? Okay, happy to move on. I wondered if we could just slightly change the agenda around and do active travel next, because David Sutton's come specifically to talk to that. So we can release him after this item if members are happy with that. Okay, right, over to you, David.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So members, this is an update report on our progress with active travel initiatives really across the council. So I'm asking that the committee note the content of the report, which includes works for the future that we will be undertaking. The report really reminds and puts some definitions of active travel in, which I think all councillors will know. Active travel is walking and cycling effectively, the main two forms. And just a reminder that this committee was successful with its recommendation to Policy and Resources. It then went to Council for allocating a £100,000 reserve for revenue funding to recruit an active travel officer on a 3-year fixed term period, which is now sitting within the budget. Also refers to our sustainability strategy and action plan, which has been through Environment Committee and through Council. And as you'd expect, the sustainability plan does have references to active travel and modes of travel. The specific ones that are in the action plan are around low emission business travel for staff and commuting for staff, and quite a large project within the town investment plan. Okay to continue, Julian? Fine, I'll push on. So if we move into the section 3 of the report, the funding has been allocated for the active travel officer. So a new post of sustainability officer will be created. We've drafted a job description for that. I think recruitment for that will probably be in September. I don't think I'd normally look to interview in August. It's not the best time of year with people away on a holiday. And just to note at 3.2, there are a couple of other posts. So we have our sustainability officer post, and members will know that Claire Neville's seconded into that at the moment. Well, Ruth Coral's on maternity leave. We also have resource within the town investment plan project for a full-time officer for 12 months and a part-time for some time after that to deliver the bike hire scheme, particularly, which involve procurement and mobilisation. So I'm very hopeful here that we can have a team of 3 officers working together across the whole sustainability piece, with this particular officer obviously focused on active travel, which will be a range of active travel initiatives. Their major focus in the early months will certainly be the procurement of the bike hire scheme, which are a very big project for Worcester and have a big impact on active travel. At 3.4, there's some details around the town investment plan active travel project. Members hopefully will be familiar with that. There were some very weighty business cases went through P&R. So a summary here, really, we're contributing funding towards the new proposed the Kippax Bridge across from Gulliver to Kippax Country Park that the County Council will be building. 3 areas of new or improved cycle routes and walking routes. The canal towpath going right up to Blackpole and Sixways to be surfaced. Extending a surfaced route from Diglis down towards the Carrington Bridge, stopping off at Dace Close, and some quite extensive routes around Ronkswood, the hospital and County Hall. And then looking for a bike hire scheme that will be conventional bikes and e-bikes. We've looked at a number of schemes. We need to go into a fairly detailed procurement on this. But what we're looking at is something where there'll be bikes located all across the city, and you would use a mobile app in order to be able to book one and be charged by the minute for it. So you could book your bike, you could ride from the Cathedral to Gulliver Park, you could stop off there, de-hire it, you could then come out, pick up a bike again, go to your next location, rather than having to hire a bike for an entire day. And then if we move on to 3.10, talking about staff active travel, members who've been into the Guildhall will see that there's some work underway at the rear to convert an old toilet block into a shower and changing facility. And with a new bike shelter, a secure bike shelter, will be going on the slabs at the rear of the car park to give us some good facilities there. We've got good facilities at the Museum and Art Gallery for staff and members who visit to park their bikes securely and changing facilities. Also upgrading Astwood Cemetery and Warndon Depot later in the year. We've got the shift scheme, which is about to be launched, where the council will make a small charity donation per kilometre that staff walk and cycle whilst on business and whilst commuting. And you members, I'm sure, will have seen that our parking team are making good use of the e-bikes travelling around the city. They've all had bikeability training, using the bikes on a regular basis. I think that's very successful, enabling them to get to the further reaches of what isn't a very large city, but on foot it's a fair walk to some of the outlying areas. A reminder for members that their cycle mileage expenses and travel expenses apply to bikes and cycles as well as they do to cars. That's available to staff and to members. And then just ongoing, really, how we will continue to report this. I'm proposing that we have an active travel plan that we'll bring back to this committee. So that'll be a piece of work for the officer to draft up. Headline number of projects that the committee may wish to oversee and monitor. And the committee scorecard already includes the active travel project that's within the town investment plan. And you see, I think that's the first item actually on the Q1 report scorecard. Currently showing green. We've just had government final approval of all of the funding. So we'll move to that delivery stage and start getting into procurement. So that's the report for information. Chair, very happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Very exciting developments and a huge amount of interest in all that amongst the general public within Worcester as well as our members. So I see a couple of hands up to start us off. Lucy?
Are local members going to get informed about this? I had no idea about 3.6.3 that it was going to Lippard Grange. I had no idea at all, and I'm one of the local members.
Apologies for that, and yeah, very, very happy to have a detailed discussion. I think there was a lot of detail has gone through some of the member consultation, the town investment plan, and the business cases, but I accept those were fairly weighty documents, so that level of detail may.
But I never knew anything about this.
Okay.
I'm sorry. It's a very, very good. Very, very good thing, and I'm sure it'll make cycling and walking a lot easier. But it might have been nice that local members knew.
Absolutely, point noted. And county highways that will be delivering these schemes will go through their normal consultation locally, which will include local members. But yeah, point noted, Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you. Karen, next.
Thank you. I was just wondering, recruiting, are we looking to help? Are you looking for members to help promote it? Are you looking for somebody within the city themselves, or are you looking wider for that? Are you looking for someone who's probably a very active cyclist themselves, or that way inclined? So I was just wondering, are you looking to bring someone in, or somebody who lives here already?
We would like a very good candidate for the job. So be very any help members can do in promoting the post would be very welcome. Without going into all the criteria now, I think someone who's an active cyclist and is committed to sustainability and this sort of mode of transport would do very well in the post, and certainly be what we would be looking for. So when that goes, they'll go out through our usual channels. I'll make a note, and we'll send that out to members. And if you have people you think might be suitable, please pass on that opportunity to them.
Oh, I didn't have anyone in mind. It's just I know there's some very keen, active people in the community already. So, and sometimes although we do agree these things, sometimes we end up the last to know. Like as Lucy said, we miss that message, and I find out a lot of stuff through Facebook. So I thought, oh, okay, we're doing that now, are we? Good.
Okay, thank you, Richard.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's just a question about the Keepax Bridge. Members will know that I raised a few objections or concerns about it because of its lack of connectivity to other parts of the city, especially this side of the river. I just wonder if you've got any more information about that, because there was always an aspiration to extend connectivity, and I want to know if we're beyond an aspiration and whether the west side of the river will actually be resurfaced to allow cyclists to use it. At the moment, well, not at the moment, but most of the year, it's a muddy path, which is not suitable for cycling. And we have been asking for a long time for connectivity from Downs Green to the riverside via Albury Road and the university. Something, again, which has been told is an aspiration, but never actually achieve anything. Are we any closer to achieving active routes to enable connectivity with the bridge, or is it still going to be, unfortunately, unconnected?
The project that we're contributing to through the Towns Fund is to build the bridge across from Gullivel to Keepax Park, and then it will go across to the Hallow Road. Certainly, talking to county officers, there is an aspiration, as you say, to extend that surface path both sides of the river. That's not currently within the project that we're funding right now.
Okay, thank you.
Can I very quickly come back, because that does concern me. That does concern me, Chair, that we're building this magnificent bridge to nowhere and there's no connectivity to it. It is a bit of a pointless exercise. However, we'll keep the pressure on and hopefully we'll get connectivity and we'll actually achieve something.
I guess we need to be mindful of the roles of this committee and the functions of the county council. If I may, I mean, certainly one of my questions related to paragraph 3.7, in that the county council will deliver the majority of the project. And I guess, have we got any kind of the clarity of the role of this committee? So, you know, we are being communicated with, we have the ability to feed in. Have we got just a little bit more information as to how that might work?
Yeah, the project will be reported for progress, so the committee will be able to track progress and clearly ask questions and ask for detailed information as required. But there are really three phases to the project. So the one is the bridge, which I think is fairly well publicised. The county will deliver that as a highway project, as other highway projects. The second one is the footpaths. They will be subject to obviously local consultation about the detail. It's very much a business as usual project for county highways to deliver this sort of infrastructure. And there'll be a funding agreement around that, and that's been delegated to officers to enter into those relevant funding agreements with the county council. And then for the bike hire scheme, that will be our scheme. I'm really pleased. I've had a very good meeting with the county council officers at the end of last week, and there's a commitment there to assist with that project, to put some resource into the procurement team. There is some county officer resource and it's a commitment there. That will be a procurement for the city council. So the big decisions around procurement will follow our normal rules and come to the appropriate member forum for that. Several £100,000 procurement.
Thank you, and thank you for that clarification. I've got Tom next.
Thank you, Chair. This is unusual in the guild where you don't have to worry about unmuting yourself. David, thank you for your presentation. I have a couple of questions. The first one is to do with the timeline for the active travel officers post. Do we have an idea about when this person will be in post? And then secondly, in terms of the scope of the project, the first two specific projects are relating to staff travel habits, behaviors. The second one has to do with the town investment fund. In terms of the scope of the project, because active travel considers not only cycling but also walking and generally, reducing all the reliance on cars, as we all know. Are we including in the scope of this person's job role working with businesses, third sector, on changing behavior when it comes to active travel in the city? So that would include stakeholders in the environmental sustainability strategy, which, as we all know, exceed statutory organisations. Thank you.
Yeah, and yes, you're quite right. That will be the report that approved the funding for this post, or the recommendation, had quite a bit of detail about elements of active travel projects that the committee wanted the officer to cover. Apologies, I haven't reproduced all that in this report. One thing we've learned from our sustainability action plan is there is a tremendous amount of different elements and projects that we could be delivering. So what I would like to do with this post, and I'll talk to you about the timeline in a second, is get an action plan around the delivery for this particular post and this project. I think, frankly, there's probably more than the office can do all at once. So members involved in the decision about prioritisation. But certainly it's a very, very broad scope. And looking on a timeline, I think if we're going to sort of look to probably go through an interview stage second half of September, I would have thought towards the end of the calendar year. Often it depends on the candidate, that could be on 2 months' notice or could be available immediately. So we'll keep you informed about that when we make an appointment.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Yep. James.
Chair, thank you. Following on from Richard's point about the bike procurement, can we establish where the timeline is going to be on this? I think it's quite important. We've got a couple of parts to a sentence here, which we'll talk about a multi-year contract and several £100,000. Well, okay, I get that this is still in the process of being firmed up, so to speak, at the moment. When can we expect a more clarified timeline on the money and the extent of the contract on this?
So we've done a piece of work around. We commissioned some research around feasibility of bike hire schemes, because they are fairly new across the country. There are a number of successful ones. There's some lessons to be learned from some of the others that have been less successful. That's enabled us to put a budget around it within the town investment plan. I think our timeline for a go live, we'll probably be looking for a go live around spring 24. All the information we've had back is the mobilisation phase for this is absolutely key. Selecting where all the stations are going to be, where the bikes are going to be parked. Actually, procurement of bikes at the moment is quite difficult. Anyway, there's quite a shortage of, as you know, of steel and recovering from the pandemic, so there's quite a lead in time to that. With something like this, I'm very conscious that it's better to get it right when you launch it. It's a very complex project. So I think that timeline, sort of spring, would be a good time to launch. We may do some piloting towards the end of next year, but penciled in at the moment would be a spring launch 2024. Does that give you enough detail, Councillor?
And one assumes that at some point, at appropriate time, we'll come back to the committee with more detail as it emerges.
Yes, absolutely. I think one thing that's quite clear is the specification that we come up with will be reasonably broad. The key here is there will be a delivery partner. There are companies that deliver these schemes. And they need to be we need to be very comfortable that they are able to deliver. So rather than being over prescriptive, it'll be quite an iterative procurement process with a number of providers, and then we'll settle on the detail of the scheme that's right for the provider. Firstly, right for Worcester, but also right for the provider, and that's your best chance of ensuring success.
Thanks, David.
It absolutely is part of the function of this committee to be overseeing that project.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Karen?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, David, there's a number of, well, I know of at least one existing bike hire company which operates, it's a sports centre down by the back of the Guildhall, by the, not Guildhall, Gallivant Park. I wouldn't want to see their business model trashed. Would we be able to work with an existing company? I don't know if there's any others, but they've invested in this bike hire business, and given the stresses that a lot of companies have been under, I wouldn't want to see a Worcester business disadvantaged by its own city council. So that was my one thought. I don't know if there's any way of working with an existing company, but they've already got that investment in place.
Yeah, the sort of scheme we'd be talking about will probably be a couple of hundred bikes across the city. So this is almost a sort of drop off. And as I sort of gave a little example previously of somebody touring the city, most of the small scale bike hire would be you would go and hire a bike for a day or 2 days or 3 days. This is quite a different scheme. The bikes are quite different. They're not sort of standard mountain bikes. They're probably a little bit heavier. The e-bikes, they're more suited for touring slowly around a city rather than going on a long ride. Certainly, I think some dialogue with existing businesses will be part of what we were doing. I think it's quite a different business model from what you've described. But I wouldn't like to rule that.
No, yeah. I had already noticed it, and I didn't, given how hard it's been for them as a little sports centre to stay in business, it would seem quite horrible to sort of corner them with our extra funding. And the other thing was, are we going to include things like scooters? I was in York last year. They have scooters. Bristol certainly has scooters. And they are quite popular. I do have safety concerns about them, but I don't know. It's still part of the active travel thing. And moving on from that, our high street is not accessible at the moment at certain times of the day because of the poor behaviour. Do you think we could look at taking that back a step and giving people the opportunity to use the high street again carefully? Perhaps put a speed limit on it or something like that. And that's probably something that has to be taken up to county, but to make a scheme work, people do need to be able to move around, and that's sort of key, to not be able to use our own high street, does seem a bit limiting, because I mean, we can't even actually cycle to the Crown Gate bike park. You know, it seems a bit strange.
Yeah. So two questions there that I can't give you a definitive answer on right now. I know that scooters, that the law seems to be evolving around scooters, and there have been areas of this country where that's been relaxed, and they've been trialed. So I'm sure that will come up in discussion with the providers. It's not something that's built into our plans and feasibility at the moment, but it's very early days for electric scooters. The county council are going to be heavily involved in this project, and I'm sure they will look at all the various orders and take a view from that, but I can't really comment further on that.
Okay, thank you. Richard?
Well, there's two things following on from what Karen just said. I think there does need to be a review of the cycling prohibition areas within the city centre to see what relaxations can take place. And I think we as a city council can use our influence with the county council to take that to the next stage. Only last week, as you'll know, Chair, I raised the issue of the possibility of using cargo bikes in the city centre for the delivery of goods to and from residents' homes, and even using them as a form of a taxi and carrying passengers around. So it's possible that we can actually use the city centre, if we are imaginative enough, in a whole new, different kind of way. But my other question, which was relating to something which I've raised before, and I'm not sure where it is within the active travel programme, is the issue of cycling recycling. Where people who've got bikes and cycles in their garden sheds, which they bought for their children, which are now out of size, out of date, and maybe in need of a bit of repair, they want to actually donate them so other people can actually use them. And have we got any mechanism, which I know Crown Gate were talking about doing something about this and having some room dedicated on their site to allow this to happen, but to allow people to recycle their bicycles and to help other people who haven't got access to the resources to buy a bicycle, especially for children, to actually gain one.
So not something I've got an answer to right now. We can certainly go and look at that. I mean, I've been aware of various very small schemes over the years, but not something that's embedded within this project, Councillor Udall. So I'll take that one away and speak to some colleagues in the waste and recycling sector and see if I can come back with an answer for you. But it may be something that we wish to develop with our active travel officer.
Yeah, I think it's one to sort of pencil into the action plan potentially for the travel officer. Thank you. Councillor Hodgson.
Yes, let me just, yes, I'm unmuted, that's great. Yes, okay, it's me this time. Okay, a few years ago, I went to a very interesting meet seminar where they talked about the London, like the Boris bike rental scheme and how that actually works. And there was some very interesting attributes about that. For example, the bikes themselves go into particular pods. Obviously, that records the data of also where they're being rented from and where they're being hired to. So their scheme means you don't have to hire a bike necessarily from one point to return to the same point, you return to somewhere else. So that works quite well. For example, people like commuters who, for example, might get a train to Foregate Street or Shrub Hill, and they can literally pick a bike from there, cycle it to their place of work. They have cycle racks near the business areas and that. And then what actually happens is they're normally in the centre, and those bikes then available then for people during the day to actually use it, for example, tourists and those sort of things. And then what happens is they might go to different locations, and what they do is it's information that the London Bicycle Team uses that data to where the bikes are actually needed. So, for example, when people are leaving work, want to cycle back to the railway station, have a system whereby the bicycles are actually moved into position for those particular peaks and troughs, and it's quite a clever, quite a clever scheme in that. And you can also, if a bicycle is damaged, when you put it into the the pod, you can also defect it as well, so that it notifies the control centre that that bike needs to be looked at. That can hopefully be put back into service as quickly as possible. The scheme Worcester going to have some of those sorts of attributes in that, because I think it'd be really good, especially if we could have bike rental things by our railway stations that can be used as that particular package, and also have them as well at some of our key business parks as well, and that way being able to use bicycles several times during the day, so they get used as effectively as possible.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you've described it very, very well, actually, the type of schemes that we've been looking at. So, yeah, schemes have moved away from you pick a bike up from one place and you take it back again. And actually now there isn't even a docking station. There's a GIS link to the bike, so we know exactly where it is, how fast it's been going, how long it's been hired. And one of the schemes we looked at, they actually use cargo bikes, to relocate the bikes back to where they need to be. And they're quite sophisticated about some of the pricing and the charging in order to encourage bikes to be returned and certain journeys to be used. I think they gave an example where a lot of people use it to go to work very, very early in the morning, and then were catching the bus back because the bus ran back. So they used some incentives to persuade people actually to cycle back and move the bikes around. So there's a huge amount of data now from a GIS tracked bike and an app booking system.
Okay, thank you. Sounds really good. Shafaz?
Thank you, Chair. Just a bit of a quick question for you, David. What's the exact charge going to be for the bike hire? Because obviously we need to make it as affordable as possible to promote it, and not promote it as a business. Yeah, and too early. Thank you, Councillor. It's too early to be able to give you a figure. I wouldn't want to quote a figure now, because there are lots of options about how much capital you put up front, capital investment versus ongoing revenue. So that will be something that will come out during the procurement phase. But we would clearly look to make it as affordable and attractive as possible to encourage that usage. And one of the key things, I think, in the procurement for the business model is to make it attractive for the provider to drive up usage and mileage, so that they encourage that. They have an incentive to create more use. So there clearly needs to be an attractive rental fee to drive up the usage. Of course. I hope that makes sense. But there's a lot of detail to work out through the procurement phase. Thank you, David.
Thank you. Councillor Hodgson, again.
Yeah, sorry. I probably, is it citywide, or is it only just parts of the city that we're going to get this bike scheme?
So we would look to go citywide. Clearly the business model needs to work, so we need to talk to the providers about exactly what citywide means and how far they go out. But we have seen schemes with bike parks in suburban areas, in residential areas. So I can envisage that would be the case. We need to settle on the exact numbers of bikes and the numbers of bike parks. That these geo-fenced bike parks, as they're called, are very, very easy to put in and take out. It's effectively a line sprayed on the pavement in a suitable location. You can put them in, trial them, have a number of bikes there. There will be a lot of local consultation about exactly where those go, as you can imagine. Particularly if you're in residential areas, it's about them being overlooked and observed, but equally not right by somebody's front door.
So we will be getting it in St Peter's, Warndon Villages, Claims, that sort of thing. That's
absolutely the intention. I'm just caveating slightly because I'd like to go through the procurement phase to see the business model. But the intention would be that you would be able to cycle from one of those residential areas into the city for work or for leisure, drop the bike off, de-hire it, and then pick one up at the end of the day and cycle back and leave it in the residential area in the evening.
Or cross the city or something.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
It sounds really exciting. And yeah, Worcester is a city of a size where it for cycling, it could be a whole city scheme. Sounds very feasible. A couple of questions from me, if I may. In paragraph 3.621, which is about extending the canal towpath to create a hard surface route from Diglis up to Blackpool and then 6 ways. Do you know if it incorporates, because there's a piece of road by Diglis Island on the east side, which apparently belongs to the Canals and Rivers Trust, and it has neither pavement nor cycle paths. So there is, as it is at the moment, there's kind of concern about safety on that bit.
This is the Diglis Stock Road section.
Yes.
I think with a low concrete wall on the riverside. Yeah, it's a private road. We had a project. You remember the Diglis Section 106 project where we put lighting in there and made some considerable improvements to open it up. I think that's probably something to take away, whether there could be some delineation and segregation in that section.
So that's an extra piece of work that you don't think is incorporated at the minute?
No, more of the focus is on the resurfacing, because that will be the real expense for those sections further north on the canal, and then we're going south from the bridge in the other part. So I don't think that's specifically in, but just thinking it through, I don't think it's a huge piece of work. So either within this project or alongside it with Canal and River Trust, I think that's reasonably achievable to get some lines painted and some delineation on that section.
Okay, thank you. And then, I mean, the work with regard to, you know, staff active travel and making that easier and bikeability all sounds really good. I'm pleased to hear that. I wonder whether within that piece of work, you know, there's some sort of key performance indicators in terms of how many staff take up the bike hire scheme, or, you know, what kind of mileage, what level of shift there is that takes place. Presumably that data will be captured.
Certainly the mileage will be captured, and particularly within the shift scheme, because there's a financial allocation that goes with it. Yeah, we found it reasonably difficult at the moment to assess staff active travel because of coming out of COVID, and we're in a different situation to where we were before. So our baseline's quite different in terms of number of days. I think cycling or walking into work. But part of the project is assessing where we are. What we're doing with the new facilities, we're making as accessible as possible. So all the things that come back from the research are somewhere to be able to change, showers preferably, particularly in weather like this, and knowing that your bike will be safe and secure in the daytime. And you can take clothes in or have clothes at work. So we're making it as easy as possible. And when we've got the officer in post, they can promote that further.
That's great. Thank you ever so much. I think, you know, we've a lot more information there as to what's coming to Worcester. As you can see, a huge amount of interest, and we look forward to sort of further reports and progress coming back to this committee. So the committee happy to note the contents of this report at this time. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
So then we come to agenda item 5, Herefordshire and Worcestershire Integrated Care Partnership and the development of a Worcester City District Collaborative. I think that's you, Lloyd, to explain it to us.
Thank you, Chair. I shall try my very best. Up front, I'm no expert in the architecture of ICS and ICB, so please go steady. So this is a noting report. Members will have picked that up, and as you say, Chair, it's to update members really on the work around the development of the Herefordshire and Worcestershire Integrated Care Partnership, but more importantly, what does that mean locally for us at a district level around health and wellbeing. So just very quickly, Chair, the Health and Care Act 2021 introduced significant reforms to the way health and care services across England are to be delivered. And the key change is the formalisation of what we call integrated care systems. So really, this is about bringing providers and commissioners of NHS services together across a geographical area, along with local authorities in a meaningful way to collectively plan health and care services for the benefit of residents. One of the key opportunities for us as a council is that much of the activity to integrate care and improve population health will be driven by organisations collaborating over smaller geographies. So this is what we're referring to as the district collaboratives, and I'll come on to that in a moment. And in particular, the district collaboratives, I think, are going to be key in helping us deliver much of what's within our city plan over the next 5 years, and in particular, health inequalities, which have become a real conversation of topic, haven't they, over the last sort of 18 months, 24 months, particularly with COVID. So integrated care systems are the new partnerships between organisations that meet health and care needs across an area, and they will coordinate services and plan them in a way that aims to improve population health and, as I say, reduce inequalities. The Herefordshire and Worcestershire Health and Care System, that was formally designated as an ICS on the 1st of April 2021. And that's had the impact of the CCG, the Clinical Commissioning Group, and all its functions. They've now transferred to become a statutory integrated care board for both counties. That happened on the 1st of July 2022. So the CCG in effect no longer exists. And in the report, I've included a link there, Chair, to help members better understand the system and how it works. I've also included in the appendix some pictograms, really, from the Worcestershire and Herefordshire ICS system website, just to help members along. But a couple of key elements are as follows. So the Herefordshire Worcestershire ICS covers a population of 800,000. That's served by 2 county councils, Herefordshire and Worcestershire, 6 district councils, 3 NHS health and care trusts, 1 CCG and 15 primary care networks. So that's it at a very, very grand level. And then at a place level, we're looking at a Worcestershire Partnership Board and a Herefordshire Partnership Board, and that's where the conversations start to get drilled down. Then beneath that place level, there are several neighbourhoods which cover a smaller population size, and these will focus on integrating primary, community and social care through these multidisciplinary teams and joint working arrangements. And the proposal within Worcestershire is for district collaboratives to fill this neighbourhood space. Now, many members will know that through COVID, we had the COVID-19 IMT, the incident management teams, and they were attended by key multi-agency partners. I've listed some of those in paragraph 3.7. And as I've said before at previous committees, for the first time, many of us in our careers were sat in a room proactively working on things that we had a joint stake in, and that we could all add value to. And I think it was a real light bulb moment for us, and it was just coincidence that the work around ICS was going on in the background. So I think it was two worlds colliding in a good way. The work of the Worcester City IMT and the neighbouring IMTs has been recognised locally, regionally and nationally. And in particular, the way in which we were one of the first areas to move to hyperlocal vaccination clinics. We recognise that, working out of and offering services out to community venues, removed the barriers for hard to reach communities who had difficulty in being able to access more central clinics, whether that be due to travel or perception or for other reasons. So throughout the pandemic, in the background, the preparation and transition work has carried on at that very high level around developing the integrated care system. But also the conversation has commenced around, the district IMT, feels the perfect place to transition from that group into the new district collaborative. And there are several reasons for that. The IMT very quickly became outcome and delivery focused, and the district collaboratives, as part of the ICS system, are very clearly the doing group. So it's very much carrying on as normal for us. The IMT's already got good levels of multi-agency partnership working and good relationships, and more importantly, a better understanding of each other's work and I feel we're well placed to hit the ground running. You know, we've not stopped doing what we've stopped doing, basically. And we've got a profile and a reputation, I think, that will help in getting projects up and running. So on Friday, the 10th of June, we had our first meeting as a collaborative. We held it at Warndon Hub in the spirit of continuing to, you know, be non-council centric and get out into the community where it's most important. And that was our first conversation about us transitioning to becoming a district collaborative. There were an equal number and more organisations in the room. So we had VCS in the room for the first time. We had some other partner agencies in there as well. And again, we've continued to build up that shared knowledge of the wider Worcester City system. We now have a draft overarching vision, which is to work together for all to be well in Worcester City. And our emerging priorities for the District Collaborative for this year are 3.16, so tackling loneliness and social isolation, providing the best start in life during maternity and children's health, and then targeted engagement where inequality and or deprivation is linked to health outcomes. So we're going to be meeting 6 weekly, just to make sure that we continue, you know, at pace and we can develop projects for the remainder of this year. And towards the end of the report, Chair, we will absolutely ensure that this committee is kept up to date on the work of the collaborative. And of course, we'll work with the Chair and Vice Chair of this committee as well in respect of early developments around arrangements and priorities and reporting procedures. So still early days, you know, there's much to get stuck into. Yeah, it's a really exciting time, not just for the council, but for the city as a whole and those partners in coming together. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, and well done for explaining it. Actually, I have sat through in different committees a number of explanations, and you've done pretty well to make this understandable. So well done, Mike. Thank you. Questions from colleagues? Comments? Steve.
Thank you, Lloyd. Just a sort of simple question of practicalities. In terms of the district collaborative, who from is representing Worcester City Council at the district collaborative level?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cochrane. So I've been asked to chair the group. So we'll have a sort of a high level representation from the council, but we've also got representation from housing, from community engagement, and we'll probably also have involvement from sort of leisure and recreation as well through Alan New. But I think, given that the arrangements are very flexible, the only statutory duty, Councillor Cochrane, is to collaborate. It's very much left up to us as to how we run it. So we've absolutely identified that, okay, we may have a core existing group of members, but we will be inviting people in as and when, you know, when projects relate to them or when priorities change. So it's certainly not a closed group, and it will be inclusive.
So in terms of Worcester City Council's role, have you identified sort of the key areas as yet where Worcester City Council will have, you know, kind of a major role to play, coordinating across the collaborative?
I think it's varied. I think it's you as members sat in the room that officers can lean on and rely on and draw on in terms of local knowledge and local expertise to be able to help us develop priorities and projects. It's through the statutory services which we deliver. So, you know, we've got leisure centres, we provide recreation, we provide green spaces, we provide open space, we provide housing. So it's you know, we've got a good offer there. And I think the third point is through influence, whether that be, you know, financial influence via funding, or whether it's influence via our sort of position or standing within the sort of city framework, really. So it's not one particular thing. I think it's a multitude of things that the district council brings, including you as the strength of you as members as well.
Yeah, I mean, what like, as far as I understand, one of the key concepts behind having these collaboratives is to break down the barriers between social care, healthcare, and then, sort of health promotion and prevention, public health, and so on. And broadly speaking, the barriers are communication. So obviously, your regular meeting is, provides part of that function. And then funding, meaning, there are various situations whereby, if you like, there's an argument as to over who should fund what. That's where I think, having someone at your level, involved with the meeting is really positive.
Okay, thank you. James?
Thank you, Chair. Really only to try to develop some of Steve's points there. You and I, Chair, we're at a meeting this afternoon where we spoke about collaboration. And I think we've spoken about collaboration for as long as I've been part of Communities Committee and other committees over the course of over many years. As we build this mosaic, we're going to, build all the pieces together in such a way that we produce more effective outcomes, because ultimately that's what we're about, isn't it? I totally get the idea of collaboration and I'm fully supportive of it. But it is, how are we going to move through the discussions to a point where we actually then emerge with something that is better? I'm always willing to work with colleagues across any agency, but it's that route through, that navigation through, so we then emerge with something which is providing a series of outcomes that are better. Worcester and Worcestershire.
Yeah, it's a big question, I suppose. Just to give an example, I suppose, one of the priorities that we've come up with for Worcester City, and Worcestershire Children's First weren't in the room. So, none of the organisations needed to, but we all agreed that children's health was a priority for us. Now, that there was nobody there from children driving that. That was a conversation driven by other partners within the city. So I think I think through COVID, I think a lot of barriers have been naturally broken down, and there's a real sense of place, and what's important to us as areas. So that's a bit glee, isn't it? But it's very much, I think people in the room are bought into Worcester and wanting to try and improve things for Worcester. It's not all about reinventing the wheel or about coming up with new things. It's about where partners can add value to existing services. And we've got some small examples of where that's going on at the moment, and we're looking to continue to develop that. But I think the other thing, Councillor Stanley, to mention is we are going to be held to account by some hefty bodies here. So Health and Wellbeing Board, the ICS Players Boards, they will be expecting district collaboratives to deliver. There'll be small amounts of funding associated with it as well. So yeah, I can't give you a straight line answer through it, but what I can reassure you of is that and I'm sensing this from across other areas, people who are in the district collaborative room are absolutely committed to making things work for local residents.
Okay, thank you. Karen?
Thank you, Chair. I've got a sort of a general sort of issue. We've got a lot of older people in the Claines area, and one, in fact, a next door neighbour but one, who's recently knocked on my door and told me that she's got dementia, and has been causing my neighbours concern today because she appears distressed, but they don't know who to turn to. So they contacted me, but I must admit, I don't know. So if I don't know the people I contact in a sort of low-grade concern emergency to get advice, perhaps we're missing something with these sort of, when we've got this sort of network, but how do we interface with it as ordinary people It's that how do we find help? You know, it's a difficult one, but it's like and it could happen to anyone at any time. You find someone's knocked down or something like that, and you don't know who they are. Who do you get hold of? Who do you turn to?
Yeah, I'm not an expert in local service providers. I don't have that level of detail, but again, if it's dementia specific, then a search of the internet, organisations like Worcester Community Trust,
like on-side advocacy.
On-side, I was going to call on-side advocacy. So there are some key organisations within Worcester that even if they don't provide that service, would very quickly and easily be able to point you into it. So again, I just wonder, Councillor Lawrence, whether or not there's a piece of work that we need to do as officers to provide you with members with good contact details for the 3 or 4 key organisations in Worcester that you can almost rely on for an answer, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's more not wanting to ask the wrong people. She's already got carers coming in, don't know who they are, don't have any contact details for them, and she went off to attend her husband's grave, as she does every day, and got hot and bewildered.
I think, Karen, to be kind of careful about talking about an individual in the committee context. But thank you. So yeah, there are organisations. So On-Side Advocacy have the contract to provide dementia advice, and they also, very expert in a number of other services as advocates for people who are unable to advocate for themselves and for people with mental health issues. So yeah, so I suggest you start with a conversation with them. Councillor Hodgson.
So and also Age UK as well.
Yeah,
might be worth contacting. How confident are we that the collaborative working that got us through COVID is going to continue and really matter?
Yeah, I would say this, Chair, wouldn't I? I'm hugely confident. Within one session, we've ground out a set of priorities. There was very little, we sort of corralled around those fairly quickly. We're already into sort of idea generation mode around what we can do. There's no one organisation who's talking about what they can't do. It's very much about what they're able to do. So at the moment, Councillor Hodgson, I'm as assured as I can be, but obviously the proof will be in the pudding.
Okay, thank you. Tom?
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you for this introductory report, Lloyd. I have a quick question on the consultation process to develop those priorities. Can you shed some light on this? How what kind of timeline we are looking? Who will be consulted? You did mention that the collaborative will rely on the breadth of the experience. So this committee, there are people who are involved. Obviously, there's a physician among us, but there are people who are involved in public health projects. How would you describe this consultation process going forward?
So this is very much a sort of an operational district level working group, Councillor Petrosky. So we weren't envisaging any level of consultation. We've got the Worcestershire Health and Wellbeing strategy, which has been consulted on, and which has got some very clear priorities. We feel these fit within the parameter of the health and wellbeing strategy. So there wasn't going to be a level of consultation onwards with this. We've got probably north of 12 or 13 organisations sat in the district collaborative. We've got a VCS who represent a wide range of organisations and communities as well. It's about getting on and doing, rather than going through a machination of conversations, if that makes sense.
Chair, can I just follow up very quickly? So, am I to understand that this is this collaborative is essentially will be essentially charged with making sure that the health and wellbeing board's priorities are being delivered in the locality? Is that the right interpretation of the? Yeah,
you're not a million miles away, Councillor Petrosky. So probably, straight hard line. We report into the integrated care system partnership board, but actually there will be a very strong dotted line into the health and wellbeing board, because they will be very interested in what the district collaborative do as well.
Okay, thank you. And I'm picks up a couple of points that I wanted to raise or to clarify. I mean, it's certainly, building on the incident management teams is one of the positives out of COVID. There's many negatives and a lot of heartache, as we know, due to COVID, but I think greater collaborative working is absolutely one of the positives, and it's really good to see that being built on and continued. My question is actually about the role of elected members within that, because there is, to me, a difference between an operational incident management team and a body that is deciding priorities and a vision. And if it's just coming to this committee as well, this is what the collaborative has decided, is that adequate involvement of elected members who know our communities?
So I think we've briefly discussed this, Chair, haven't we? And I think one of the standing items that seems to be forming as part of this committee is the annual, let's call it the annual State of the Nation report around health and wellbeing. I'm not aware of member attendance at any other district collaborative. That's not to say that can't happen. And again, there is no strong view on this. But in my mind, up until this point, I had sort of viewed the Health and Wellbeing Committee as part of their work throughout the year, almost directing us as officers to take that view, to take that steer, to take what the city's priorities are or our district priorities are into that group. And then that's our job as officers to feed that in and ensure that it finds its way onto the page. And obviously, the district collaborative will also have a reporting roll up into health and wellbeing, where there will be member oversight as well. So that's how it was being viewed. That's not to say that can't be reviewed at any time if there was a member wish for us to explore that.
I think that's helpful, and I guess it's that we haven't proactively realised that we've influenced what is in 3.16, if I can put it that way. Whereas going forwards, I think maybe as a committee, we'd like that to be a more explicit conversation with regard to the work of the collaborative. It may also be worth noting, and of interest to colleagues, certainly recognition that district councils and the services that we provide have a very profound effect on the health and well-being of our populations is well recognised. And on the Worcestershire Health and Wellbeing Board, at the County Council meeting last week, it was formally agreed that there be a mechanism that every district council would have a rep on the Health and Wellbeing Board going forward, whereas up till now there's only been one rep for South Worcestershire and one for North Worcestershire. So that's a positive step that obviously we will need to discuss locally, but again, it's another example of increasing collaboration in a different way and joint working. Thank you. Any further comments? So we are noting the discussion and the progress towards a Worcester City District collaborative with an update, a specific update in 6 months' time. Is everybody happy to note that? Thank you, and thank you to Lloyd and to officers for all the work that that you're putting in to take this forward. Much appreciated. Thank you. So next we have Q1 performance report.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the first performance report for this committee. So I'm conscious that some of the results and some of the graphs, the lack of graphs, really are due to the fact that this is the first raft of information. So it doesn't look a very pretty performance report due to its lack of pictures. We have 4 key projects that will have oversight from this committee. They are the active travel project, which we've discussed tonight, the implementing the recommendations of Child Poverty Task and Finish Group report, oversight of the integrated care system, the local arrangements which we've just discussed, and oversight of developing Worcester City health and wellbeing priorities. And again, that links to the previous item. So active travel, obviously, just had the update from David Sutton and a really good conversation there, and that will now become a regular report at the committee. At the last committee, we had an update on the Child Poverty Task and Finish Group recommendations. So that's currently showing red at the moment. So we need to update the back end of that project and its key milestone dates. So we can bring that back into line. And again, in terms of the integrated care system, we've had an update tonight, and everything is going well with that one. In terms of the performance indicators, there are a number of key performance indicators. They are the number of integrated care system health initiatives supported, the number of premises and events with an access guide. We've previously had an access able update report at this committee. The number of rough sleepers engaged with via outreach services, the number of rough sleepers transitioned to accommodation as a result of outreach, the number of disabled people living independently through home adaptation, so that's our disabled facility grant work, and then the number of exercise by prescription referrals. In terms of those key performance indicators, in Q1, we've been actively involved in 2 health initiatives. One of those was an early cancer screening clinic at the Brickfields Hub, which we were involved with, and the second being a course run for people to better manage stage 2 type 2 diabetes, to improve their health and lifestyles. And again, I now expect to see that number increase with the sort of launch of the district collaborative. In respect of access able access guides, at the moment there are 321 premises or events in the city that have an access guide applicable to them, and City Council officers and Worcester Bid are currently reviewing those to see which ones need refreshing or updating. Apologies that we weren't able to get you the information on rough sleepers in time for production of this report, but I can confirm that in Q1, pardon me, that in Q1, 50 rough sleepers were engaged with by our outreach teams during Q1, with 8 formal referrals made for support. And again, in Q1, there were 33 rough sleepers accommodated during the quarter, short term, so that will be things like severe weather emergency protocol, no second night out, and some CCP work. But importantly, during that first quarter, 11 rough sleepers have transitioned to medium or long-term property solutions. In Q1, 99 disabled facility grants were completed. So each year we get in the region of £700,000 government grant, capital grant for disabled facilities work. and in Q1, 100 grants were completed. And then lastly, the number of exercise by prescription referrals. In Q1, it was 7. That seems a low figure, but that was a trial. It was a trial that links up to the Type 2 Diabetes Project. So this was 90-minute sessions, 12 for a period of 6 weeks. We've done the trial, we've got the data back, and we're looking to launch that project, in its main form any time now. So apologies, Chair, that it's a little light on information, but I'm sure as we move through the quarters, we'll start to develop a better picture. Happy to take questions.
Thank you. Yes, it gives us a start point, an idea of the scope of what we're looking at, and yes, some interesting bits there. Steve?
Chair, in terms of the funds for the adaptations, is that for social housing or private homes, or what are the sort of rough criteria for that?
So disabled facilities grants apply across tenure. So there is no sort of tenure that's off the list, so to speak. There's obviously a list of criteria to meet around eligibility, but tenure isn't one of them.
Right. Okay. I mean, I suspect it's one of those areas whereby there are other funds available, maybe for people who have, say, complex significant disabilities through health, because 700,000 seems quite low to me. Just aware that there are some people who have major adaptations to their homes that are would eat up a significant proportion of that just for one person. Are you aware of that there's other funds available across the system?
Yeah. So this isn't the only funding package, and like you say, Councillor Cochrane, there are specialist packages of support that would fall outside of this system, and obviously, there are some people that would need to, pay as well if they didn't meet certain criteria. But yes, so the 700,000 isn't just an exhaustive pot for the city. There are other avenues out there.
Thank you.
Anybody else got a question? Councillor Hodgson?
It isn't really related to the KPIs, but in this in this really hot weather, are there any facilities for rough sleepers and that sort of thing? A bit like with the cold weather, are we implementing the hot weather sort of what's the word? You know what I mean? But yeah.
So SWEP was activated yesterday, severe weather emergency protocol. We had outreach workers on shift yesterday, working throughout the morning and into the early afternoon, checking in on rough sleepers, fundamentally just to make sure they were well, but sun cream, water, and hats if necessary. So that took place yesterday, on a day that they wouldn't normally operate, and obviously it's business as usual today for outreach workers and tomorrow. So that work is ongoing.
Thank you. I've got with regard to the last measure, I think the heading is or the description, sorry, is incorrect. Sorry to be slightly pedantic. So we've got exercise by prescription referrals, but we've inadvertently got a repeat of the disabled people in the description. That's okay.
Yeah.
Is the Diabetes Project the only exercise by prescription? Because I think I'm aware of a couple of other schemes. There's the Resistance Band project, whereby a number of different agencies and bodies are involved in that, and I think there's also a sort of balance class, I don't know whether those are self-referral or whether there's a particular definition of exercise by prescription.
Yeah, it depends how broad you want to look at, Councillor Denham, because there will be other things going on across the city. I think what we've done here is we've sort of just included those that we have a sort of a direct involvement with. But we do need to have a conversation about whether we broaden that out and so it reflects what's being provided across the wider system. You're absolutely right. I certainly know of the resistance band project. So yeah, I can take that one back, and we can review that in time for the next quarter report.
Thank you, because that'll give more numbers, and you start to get a population effect and an improvement in health and well-being, which is what we are about. Thank you very much for that. It looks as though we've exhausted questions. So note the Q1 performance, which is a beginning, and we look forward to Q2 and to progress with projects and with the data and the impact. Thank you very much. Any other business from anyone? Oh, a couple of hands up. I think the advantage of doing this on Zoom, virtual hands can't be missed, and people pop up on screen in sequence. It's actually easier than on in a room. So Richard was first.
I beat you to it, Robin. Never mind. Chair, I take your advice on this, but while the meeting's been going on, I've received a couple of notices from residents, and I've looked it up myself. The current waiting time at Worcester A&E to be seen is 10 hours, 9 minutes. Earlier today, it was 17 hours. Now, I know this is not an issue directly for this committee, but it is of grave concern to me that people are expected to wait 10 hours, 9 minutes to see any form of assistance in our accident emergency hospital in Worcester. And that is simply beyond acceptable. And I know we can't do anything now, but I do know that this is an ongoing issue and a problem which has been well rehearsed and talked about in many other places. It would certainly help my job as your representative on HOSC if we had some sort of discussion about this at a future meeting and maybe some explanation from the Trust about what they are doing to try and resolve the problem. Clearly, it's a resources issue as much as a pressure from the system issue. So, but we do need to know what they're doing to resolve the problem, because 10 hours waiting in A&E in weather like this is simply not acceptable. And I would imagine the only way to reduce that list is for people to go home in pain of not being seen by a doctor. So I do think we need to look at this as a matter of some urgency. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I mean, health and social care are challenged. The performance or the statistics around A&E have been problematic for some time, and as predicted, a severe red weather alert is only exacerbating that. It has been discussed at the health overview. What's HOSC at HOSC? Health Overview and
Scrutiny Committee.
Thank you. I was trying to remember on. Yes, thank you. Absolutely. Ambulance waiting times have been discussed. I'm looking at Councillor Stanley. We were at a meeting of adult social care scrutiny with regard to delayed discharges and complex discharges today. It is a system. Both health and social care are under severe pressure, and demand is increasing. Thank you. Robin?
Thank you, Chair. St John's Council has had an opportunity to meet with the head of Christopher Whitehead's recently, who volunteered to come to Health and Wellbeing along with some of his colleagues to talk about the impact of poverty on children, on their students. Just wondering if we could entertain inviting local school, secondary school heads to committees to give us some background on what's going on.
That sounds like a good idea to me. Is that possible, Lloyd, do you think?
There's the public participation slot chair that you know, a resident or an organisation can come along to. I suppose there's nothing, you know, members can invite very much who they want to along to a committee, as long as it meets you know, one of the constitutional elements that committee works on. But yeah, it's probably, rather than giving an answer now, Chair, probably one to take away for me to have a think about.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Councillor, for raising that. I think it is important that we know it is another angle. That sounds really trite. The impact of child poverty and food poverty on schools and educational attainment is at the heart of health inequalities. So thank you for raising it as an idea. I'm happy to take that forward in discussion with councillors. Tom?
Thank you, Chair. Just a very quick question following what Robin had to say. Is there a protocol or a way that we sort of are happy with in terms of responding to public participation in those meetings? So, you know, so somebody comes over, asks the question, and in terms of the follow-up and whether we have some kind of agreed procedure for this. I'm thinking about our previous meeting, and I don't think the participant has necessarily received any feedback. I'm not sure.
I'm looking at Julian as the who understands our constitution.
I can follow that particular issue up. I think as far as public participation is concerned, that the rules are set out in the Constitution, and there is no obligation to make a response at the meeting, whether it's from the chair or from an officer. But if there is a comment made that, you know, a written response will be provided, or that the individual concerned can contact a particular officer to find out more, then that's something which we usually pick up as one of the follow-up actions after committee. As Tom's made reference to the speaker we had at our last meeting, I will chase that particular point up.
I think
appreciate this. Thank you. Sorry.
I think the minute actually says that because some of us had received a presentation or information from that speaker, and I did share the details that he gave to me with officers. So that was the sort of minuted action point. But as Julian says, you know, there isn't, within the Constitution, there isn't a requirement for the council to reply. People come and share their thoughts on board as appropriate. Thank you. Karen?
Thank you, Chair. It's slightly, possibly off topic, but it was this discussion about children and school children. I had concerns when my son was at school about the amount of caffeinated drinks that were being consumed, and I did raise it with the school, and I wasn't sure if we could do anything about that as a city. There was supposed to be a law coming in about it, but I don't think that law has actually come to fruition. And is there any way we could voluntarily ask some of the local stores to not sell to the under 16s? Because it is definitely detrimental to their health and well-being while they're trying to learn. And there has been quite a bit of work about this at the moment. I don't know if that's something we can pick up or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a bit out of the remit at present. It's a thought that we can potentially take into the food poverty work and that assessment that we've had. Whilst endeavouring to be open and inclusive, it doesn't mean we can bring up every possible thought at every meeting. Thank you to colleagues, and thank you for all your thoughts and participation on a very hot, very sticky evening. Please stay safe, and thank you for being here this evening. Good night.
Good night.